It's a space I basically started because I wanted to have somewhere where we could really like interview and highlight amazing, Web3 artists. There was a lot of other spaces out there that I felt like were just giving people like very short period of time to talk about themselves and then try and rush to talk about their art and chill. But I wanted somewhere where we can go deeper and really get to know more about the artist behind the artwork. And hopefully through that process, like people that were maybe already following or collecting from the artist could get to know them better, right, on a deeper level, help them reach maybe new collectors, and also and also be able to maybe inspire people who have a creative passion to maybe start creating art of their own, right, and start their own artistic journey. It's a very inclusive space, so we welcome artists of all nationalities, backgrounds, artistic styles, whether they already have a huge following or are just starting out. We want to celebrate how art and creativity bring us all together. And really why we have this particular space. So now I want to turn it over to Jenny. She'll introduce our guest for today, our guest artist, and then we'll jump into the interview questions. So go ahead, Jenny.
Awesome, thank you. Pat Dimitri is a professional touring guitarist, composer, artist, and producer. Numerous songs that Pat produced achieved tens of millions of streams and ranked top on the music charts. He has collections on multiple platforms, including Foundation and OpenSea. He successfully created and released Noise, his most recent collection. Noise is a mesmerizing collection of 3D animated art. Each of the 175 NFTs is uniquely paired with original music made by Pat. Pat's music, as well as his art, are truly an example of how artistic expression should not be confined to one medium, but rather are best expressed together. And with that, Giancarlo and I welcome Pat Dimitri to the stage.
What a lovely intro. Gosh, thank you so much. I'm in your guys' spaces a lot as a listener and participant. And, I was just saying before we started, listen, artists are so self-focused and I'm no exception. So the idea that other folks will take time out of their day to let me have a platform to talk about what I love is absurd to me. So I just want to make sure that I publicly express great gratitude for that. So thank you guys.
No, and thank you so much for being here today, Pat. We really appreciate having you as a guest. We usually like to kick it off with maybe, you can take like 5 minutes and maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your story, so just to give us a sense of who is Pat Dimitri?
Yeah, it's always, the spectrum of how long people will go with this kind of stuff is anywhere between 30 seconds to 5 hours. So I'm going to try to be... I'll try to be succinct. Yeah, give all the bullet points. People are like, I was born in 1988 on a cloudy. No. So yeah, I'm from Boston. My parents are Egyptian immigrants. Grew up in Boston area, and music was it was around, but nobody in my family is musical. They're immigrants from a country where they were we need to survive and make money. Music's cool, but that's not where we're focusing, right? Although there were some artistic inclinations in my family, but they were very much overshadowed by survival. But I don't know. I picked up guitar. It was somewhat late, even though being a teenager is still very young. When you're a grown person, you realize how young that is. But I picked up guitar. I was into the Smashing Pumpkins. I eventually got into all the technical guitar playing that teenage boys love, because they think that if you play faster, then the opposite sex will like you if you impress them enough. So I got into all that stuff. I got into some really weird alternative shredding guys like Buckethead, who I still love to this day. Then I went to Northeastern, got a music degree. I studied more jazz. I got into filled in the background. I could play fast, but I didn't know any chords. So then I developed a chord vocabulary, taking private lessons with great guitar players. I was listening to a lot of funk, jazz, fusion, stuff like that. And then I moved to LA, been in LA for 10 years, and I hit the ground running, started touring with this artist, Watsky, who I still tour with to this day. And most people that know me from touring with him, and we've, over 10 years have played whatever, hundreds of shows all across the world. We've played major festivals. We've played everywhere in Europe. We've played in Australia. We've played every grimy club in North America 12 times. And then I got opportunities to tour for other artists because of my experience. I had toured with you'd call more traditional pop artists, like BB Rexa, and we opened for Nick Jonas. I played for B Miller. We were opening for Selena Gomez. I played for K-Flay, who's a really cool alt rock artist, so on and so forth. So I got more and more opportunities. And then to fill in the gaps, I was always producing. I composed for brands. And fast forward to, the past couple of years, this is going on way longer than I intended it to, but the pandemic's happening. Right. The pandemic's happening. Touring obviously stops. I'm really good friends. I went to neighboring high schools with Dave Krugman, who's like one of the best photographers on the planet and one of the best pioneers in Web3, like objectively. And I just texted him and I was like, hey, like, what is this? And so he was like, all right, buddy, he's like, you need to relax. You're in for a ride. And so he invited me onto Clubhouse, and I started learning from there, and I just hit the ground running, started putting work out. I had no visual background. I can't draw. I can barely write my own name. But I correctly, I think, assumed that I needed a visual medium to be able to express my music, or to like Trojan horse my music into people's, like, if I could get people to look at something and click the unmute button, I knew I could convince them with my music that I was worth listening to, maybe. So I tried a variety of techniques. I think I want to leave the summary there, and then we can have more of a conversation. But that's sort of how we got to roughly today.
Cool. No, that's a great introduction. And I bet, like, yeah, having parents that were, Egyptian, I know, like, a lot of the, immigrants that we have here, they always, I can relate to that. Like, yeah, art is more of a hobby, it's not really, something you pursue as like a career, but I think that's really cool that you still like picked up the guitar and actually went and studied music and kind of did that and found your, your passion in that. So that's pretty cool. And then, yeah, so one of the things I was going to ask, because I had read a little bit that, yeah, like Dave was actually the one that kind of got you into the space, and you were spending like a lot of hours in Clubhouse and, kind of, getting the space that way. And what I found interesting, and especially you mentioning now that you had like no like stuff before, but that you actually then like taught yourself how to make visuals. And I was kind of curious if you could share a little bit more about like, how did you actually go about learning how to animate? Like, what tools did you use? Just for other people that might be interested in kind of like learning a little bit about that. Like, how did you actually pick up those skills?
Yeah, totally. At first I thought, let me lean on my strength, which obviously is music, which I have this 10, 15, 20 year background in. And I've tried to find software that it allowed me to create visuals with music. And so I found there are various softwares made for live visuals. And you can program to say, okay, here's just a circle, and then we can map the kick to the circle's size. So every time there's a kick, the circle's going to go boom and open up, right? And so I started doing very basic abstract visuals like that, and people seem to dig them. All my early work, I mean, it took some time for me to get people on board, but once people are on board, people were collecting my early work. And I think it's important to note that I knew that I was starting from scratch in this space. So my early work was affordable additions. And that's frankly remained pretty much true until today. But so that was the early work. And then I start to dig a little deeper, and I'm like, I don't really have as much control over my expression that I would like. And so my friend who's a video editor was like, I think After Effects is what you need to be using. And so I started to learn After Effects. I started to take the next iteration was I would take licensable footage and manipulate it edit it to suit a color scheme that I wanted to be very consistent, which was like blacks, pinks, purples, some other stuff in there. And then I would use After Effects to edit the audio reactive portion and make it animate very clearly to the music. So that was the second iteration. The third iteration was I had a lot of success doing that. Those collections did like something like 80 to 90 ETH in volume during the bull run.
Wow.
Which to me is and a lot of it was secondary, which unfortunately for my bank account, but fortunately for the ecosystem. And but I had a lot of success doing that. But I reached a certain point where I just didn't. Again, I felt like I didn't have enough control, and I felt like people are spending their hard-earned money. I want to have an expression that is just me from start to finish. And so I went down a detour. I spent 6 months working on a project that combined physics and AI and music, and I loved the concept. The music was really good. I couldn't get it to where I wanted to be visually, and I scrapped it. And so one day I just installed Blender. It's free, and it's one of the best 3D softwares on the planet. And I haven't looked back since. And now it's been almost 2 years since I've been 3D animating, and now that has been my primary focal point for about maybe 20 months or so.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. And I think it's impressive too that like, yeah, you just, you saw that need to like kind of like you described, like Trojan horse people, like let me create the visuals to attract the audience so that then they can listen to my music. And the fact that you like taught yourself that from scratch and then said, okay, like I'm not really quite accomplishing what I want, so let me learn a different tool that allows me to get that control over it. I mean, that is super cool, man. That's awesome. And one thing I was kind of curious about too is if you could tell us a little bit more about like where does the inspiration like for your art come from? Like what drives the inspiration for your pieces?
Yeah, I can give specifics, but I think I want to start a little bit more whimsical,
Okay.
just because because I was on like TikTok Live the other day playing guitar as I do, and people are like, "Who's your favorite guitar player?" And I was like, I literally didn't have an answer because, of course, starting out in music, you attach to certain artists, and you're like, I'm obsessed. I worship this person. I want to look like them. I want to play like them. And I don't know if this is true for everyone, but after so much time of spending so much time with my instrument, spending so much time performing, I just have a voice now that exists almost like independent of my brain, and that voice responds to certain things. And for me, it's like like movie scores. It's a sunset. It's just the things that I interact with on a daily basis. It's how I feel. I woke up feeling shitty this week, and so I wrote dark music. I woke up feeling great this week, and so different kind of music came out. So I truly feel like my output is not from somewhere specific, but it's by what I'm willing to like draw in as I exist as a flesh being on this weird orb, right? But much more specifically, right now, I think it's clear that I'm obsessed with like the Rafiks of the world, and most people in this space probably know my friend Jesse Woolston, who I think is just a creative powerhouse. And so right now, visually, I'm very fascinated by particle animations and particle simulations. There's something about hundreds of thousands or millions of particles interacting with each other when you impose color schemes and lighting on them. To me, it's like the best part for me is that it's such an easy canvas for me to express myself musically over that. And in my project Noise, which is my last output in Web3, I'm just starting to get to I'm just starting to scratch the surface of what I think I can do with particles. That will, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, I'm going to look back at that as the first step into particle animations with music. And I'm very proud of it, but that's how it works as an artist, is that if you're growing really fast, you're always going to look back and be like, I'm capable of much more now. So yeah, that's that's my answer.
Love that. That's awesome. Jenny, you want to go to your question?
Yeah, I
I think it's a
do.
good
So
segue.
it's in regards to noise, and you and I kind of touched on this in this space, but I just always found this fascinating because it's such a soothing, like, visual. Why did you call your collection Noise? And can you talk more about the inspiration for that collection?
Yeah, I mean, I probably shot myself in the foot by not giving it a much more, um, let's say, on the nose title. Um, I think, like, I don't know. Uh, there's such a fine line between being too on the nose about stuff and then being too cute about stuff. And sometimes I don't find that line. Like, of course, I could have called it like cloud waves or a soothing wind or whatever. I just didn't have like, because the animations are primarily driven by noise textures in geometry nodes in Blender, and I figured, music, noise, audio, whatever. I drew a connection there, and I just said, let's run with this, and let's make it something that maybe um, let's title it something that maybe defies expectations. And then I sort of retroactively justified it by saying this project exists. The function of this project for you as a, let's say, appreciator of art is to help you drown out the noise for however long you stare at this thing. If it's for 2 seconds or if it's for 2 hours, I mean, God help you if it's for 2 hours, but if it helps you close your brain off for a little bit and forget about whatever bullshit you're dealing with. um, and I'm at the point now where I see it with younger artists where they struggle with like decision making, where people have shades of perfectionism or like this and that. Once I have an idea, I just go all the way, and then uh, I assess afterwards if it worked or if it didn't. But I have found that to be the most efficient way to grow. The easiest, quickest way to grow is to just commit to ideas and then reassess later. So that's a long-winded answer for why I titled it that.
No, definitely not long-winded at all. And I think it's great because for sure it drowns out the noise. Like when you do stare at it, it's so mesmerizing. It's so beautifully executed. Love the tonalities, love the way that it moves, all of it. It's just lovely. And I did want to ask you a question because you kind of hinted at it about like once you feel something, you just go for it. Um, the Noise collection was a fairly large collection considering the timing of when it was released in the bear market. And clearly, the audio-visual art was captivating to collectors. But I was curious to know if you felt that there were any decisions you made through marketing or networking that played a positive role in that success of that collection. And maybe if you could share that as like tips for us.
Yeah, so that's definitely astute that was a large collection to put out in. I mean, the market just doesn't seem to have a bottom. Like every time we think it's the bottom, the market somehow gets worse. And so, at the time, it's like, cool, this is the bottomest of bottom. Um, but in my head, I felt like that up until that point, I had not put out a large cohesive collection. It was almost like I for a long time I was putting out during the bull. I was putting out work every week, every 2 weeks, and it was sort of like having a 9 to 5. I'm like, all right, here's my work. Here it is, people. Here's my weekly salary, and great, everything is wonderful. In the bear market, I felt like I had to be more careful about oversupplying, and B, I I've seen in Dave and I've seen in whatever Sam Spratt and all the brilliant artists that are in our space that I am gonna fail to name. They all had released bigger collections, and those bigger collections seemed to leverage their I don't want to use the word stature, but their I don't even want to use the word prominence, but I think it allowed them to be more favorably viewed in the space from a collector's perspective. There's something about a bigger collection that exists as its own entity. And I think I mean, frankly, I was very thrilled that people received the collection well, and I'm thrilled that it's sold out. However, I expected it to be an entity that would live on its own in secondary, and that's what I saw all these other folks doing. And so my feeling was, instead of hitting people over the head every week with a new drop and marketing that drop for a couple days, I will have this large scale collection that I will market as hard as I can for however long it takes for me to feel like I have the market for it to sell out. And for me, that was like, I started marketing it when I was like 60% done with it, maybe. And so that means I probably marketed it every day for 6 weeks. And I 100% copied Gabe Weiss, where he, who's a good friend of mine, and he and all of ours, he would say, tease a drop, say, if you want to know more, message me. If you want to be on a list to have access to this drop, message me. So I did that for 6 weeks, and my list grew to like, I don't remember what, 300 people or something, which is modest, but it was enough for me to close out the project, finish it, figure out what the quantity needed to be, and execute a drop where, yeah, it sold out in like I think it was a week or so. But I put everything I had into marketing that project because I had spent 6 months creating it, and so failure wasn't an option for me. I think every artist in that works professionally understands the fear of dedicating, whether it's 6 hours or 6 months. You're dedicating a lot of time to something that you don't know if it's going to help you continue living inside and paying rent. And that's sort of the risk that we take. So I approach everything as failure is not an option, because it literally is not an option for me. So that is sort of the again, long-winded answer of how I chose to market that project.
Wow, that was really, I think, just really insightful, and I think probably good advice, for a lot of artists here that may be also considering, doing something like a larger collection and kind of following that in that suit. And I think it was a brilliant idea to kind of follow suit with like what Gabe told you, just like, hey, reach out to me, and that way you already start taking kind of like names and seeing, all right, I already have this many people that at least have an interest in purchasing, so I think that was a brilliant approach. And not to mention, yeah, I think, I discovered your collection as well, and I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. I'm actually one of those people that reached out to you as well. And so, but yeah, I think it's just a brilliant way to do that. So, and again, congrats again on selling that out, because I think it definitely was no small feat, especially in the market that we were in when you dropped it. So definitely, that's really cool. One thing I did want to learn a little bit more about, I was just kind of curious about, was if you could tell us maybe a little bit more about like your process for creating one of your like audiovisual artworks. And I was a bit intrigued, like if you also like started first with like the music and then work on the animation, or animation first, and then, just if you could talk us a little bit through like what's your process like for like creating, these kind of type of pieces.
Yeah, thanks. That's a wonderful question. I generally start visuals first, and I think it's because it's there's way more. I mean, it's coming I don't want to say it's coming easy, but it I don't feel too much friction as I continue learning to animate in 3D, because I really enjoy it. So when I get stuck, it doesn't. I'm sort of sitting there like, listen, you're a grown man that gets to research how to fix a problem to create the art that you want to create. So like, I don't get too upset about that. So I enjoy the process of getting better at it. That being said, I'm much better at music. Like my connection to music is much more intrinsic. It's much deeper. I have way more of a relationship with it. Um, so it's much easier for me to sort of drag my feet, finally make a visual that I think is compelling, and then the music usually just comes out. Certainly, there's times when where I will scrap the music 2 or 3 times before I find an approach that works for a particular piece. But that's still not that much. I could probably, I mean, I don't know why I would do this. I mean, maybe if a sync library hired me, but I could probably write 10 1-minute songs in a day if gun to my head. So I'm comfortable with the idea of throwing stuff out if it's not working. I think like good enough is not. It's just not the expression that I want to have with my art. So yeah, visual comes first, and then I allow myself to score the visual almost 99% of the time. Was there another part of that question that I missed, or does that answer your
I think
question?
that was kind of it. Yeah, just kind of curious about like the process, and did you start with the music or the animation? So no, thanks for answering
Yeah.
that.
So think about, like, I think about what my career's been like before animating or before NFTs, and like somebody would hire me. So for a long time I was the composer for Adidas Outdoor, and neither of us knew what we were doing. This is like, they were like this. I was friends with the guy working. That was the editor. He was my neighbor. This was like 2014. I had no idea what I was doing as a composer, to be frank. They barely had any idea what they were doing either. So we were both sort of learning together. But my job is to look at a visual and then score music to it, right? So I approach this creative process very much the same way as I have for whatever 9 years now.
That's cool. And such a cool insight. I could so see why. I was curious to know, I know you are incredible with using digital tools to create art, but have you ever thought of other mediums that you like or maybe would be interested in trying one day?
Man, the only thing that I could think of off the top of my head is maybe photography. I mean videography, because I do feel like the I try to put out a lot of guitar content on, like, let's say TikTok, or all my socials, because it's the easiest thing for me to create on a regular basis to stay engaged with whoever gives a shit about what I do, right? My 3D renders take a month, and like, so I can't just put out a new render every day and try to engage with an audience, but I can record 20 guitar videos in a day. And so it's unfortunate because obviously this is a whole other thing, but we live in an algorithmically driven world, and we touched on this in the room yesterday. Because I can shoot very artful, well shot guitar videos that it has no bearing on how those do versus me plugging my phone into my audio interface, playing for 30 seconds. Like, there's no bearing on what does better than the other, except one takes a lot more time. But I do like the idea of the videography of shooting like those beautiful performances, or shooting the performances in a beautiful way. But I will probably, I can't imagine I will ever pick up a paintbrush. I'm like it like I the reason that 3D works for me is that the friction of sort of, and I know this is ironic because I'm a guitar player, but the friction of like the hand-eye coordination isn't there. You're just creating based on, you're limited by math and trial and error, and so anything that you can conceive, you can create. That's not true for somebody that just picks up a paintbrush unless they're skilled. Like my girlfriend is a painter. I know she has been able to draw since she was a kid, and I know that I don't have that. So I will probably never approach that medium in a professional way. Maybe I'll do it for fun. But I feel very comfortable within the confines. Listen, the world of 3D is infinite. So I don't I think you could explore 3D for a lifetime and still only be scratching the surface. So right now I feel very comfortable about this journey. Like, I feel silly sometimes because my peers are like the best 3D artists on the planet, and I'm just like, I'm in the corner like, me too, like I'm doing it as well. And so it always feels silly. Um, but you know, we move, we do the best we can, we try to get better every day, and art is supposed to be expression, it's not a sport, and so we just try to just make the stuff and see if people connect.
Well, I think they definitely do connect, Pat, and I can so relate with you on that because my husband is a painter, and he's always encouraging me to try it. And I do for fun, like you said, but it's definitely not my forte. So yeah, and I do a lot of AI work, so I get that, like how it can be limitless, and it's just about that mind connection and being able to get that expression out. So definitely get that. And I think your videos are great. Like I follow you on IG and I could see that because it really does take like that level of artistry to capture the image, to know like what sounds would go well in that video and then put that out there into the world. So totally get that. Thank you for that answer.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to kind of ask you about, Pat, too. So I read through some like articles that and stuff you had written or gotten published through other sources before, and I know there's a big emphasis that you place and like on like hard work, right, and like how important it is to put in the work. And I think I saw you mention that like you're not just a great guitar player because you were born, gifted like as a prodigy, but it's because you've put in like a lot of hours also into like perfecting your skill. And I think there was a quote in there that said like greatness isn't determined by external factors, that the only way to succeed was to delusionally believe in yourself and just go for it, right, and like go where you want to go. And I was kind of curious because also now hearing some of these other viewpoints as well about like the artistry and all that. But I was kind of curious, like, do you believe that like with lots of hard work and dedication, can anyone really be great at anything, or there still really have to be some kind of like natural skill or proclivity involved to be able to kind of master it? So I was kind of curious, like your thoughts on that.
That's such a good question and a hard question. I'll start by saying that I don't think anybody can be objective about their own natural talents. I am inclined to believe that I didn't have a ton of natural abilities when I was learning music. I think if I had anything going for me, it's that maybe I had slightly better than average hand-eye coordination, probably from playing like Nintendo and shit as a kid. Like truly, I don't know, because like it's not like I was good at sports. It's not like I didn't excel at anything in particular. And even learning guitar the first 2-3 years, I wasn't exceptional either. But then I've also seen videos of Shaq saying like he doesn't think he's talented. He just says he worked hard. And I'm like, buddy, I'm not getting to the NBA no matter how hard I work. So there's obviously limits to what work can do when we're talking about a planet of 7 billion people, and we're talking about, again, that's a very extreme example because there's only 300 people in the NBA. But there are clearly limits to what hard work can do. But there's plenty of mediums like art where I think, you can go pretty far with close to zero talent. I had a decent ear, I think, as a teenager. Like when I took some music theory classes at the end of high school, and my ear training was like okay. And then I did like a program at Berkeley one summer, and I was old. I was like 21 maybe, and the kids were like, there were like 16-year-olds in this program, and some of them, like, their ear was just as good as mine, and they were 6 years younger. So most things can be trained. A lot of people say they have no rhythm, they have no pitch. All of these things can be trained. um, people don't People tend not to dedicate themselves to training a musical ability like that because uh, I think people falsely assume if they're not naturally inclined, then why bother? Or and people think that hard work is it's reserved for homework or college or your job or this or that, and that art is just supposed to come to you in a genie lamp or something. But again, like it's not just that. It's the factor isn't just hard work. It's what drives you to want to work every day. So as a teenager, I had to play like Buckethead. If I didn't figure out how to play like him, I would not be able to live with myself. So that's why I played for 4 hours a day or whatever it was, because I had a goal and I said, I have to keep doing this until I sound like this. Um, and so that to me is what hard work looks like. I know I want to make I want to try to make amazing particles and animations and simulations, and that means I have to sit and watch tutorials, and I have to sit and struggle in Houdini for 8 hours, or I have to post on the Blender forum and ask why the colors that I put on my geometry nodes aren't nothing's happening, and they're like, "Yeah, you're an idiot. You missed this node." It, hard work just to me it means, do you sit there for hours every day to accomplish the goal that you want to accomplish? For me, I need to do these things. I feel like I'm certainly not comparing myself to Kobe Bryant, but he had a quote where he was like, I got to the NBA and I would just like, wake up at 5 a.m. and like practice. And other people were like, man, you work really hard. He was like, I didn't know this was hard work. This is just what I do. This is the process of what I do to be good at what I do. And again, I'm much lazier than Kobe Bryant, but I feel compulsion to be able to do certain things, and I just execute what I need to do to do them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think also ultimately it really comes down to like, if you find something where you really enjoy the process and you're really passionate about it and you're willing to like put in the time to like get better and keep improving and keep learning, then then it almost won't feel like work, right? It's just something that you enjoy doing and you just spend the time doing it. Like if you love guitar, if you love creating art, you're just going to want to spend time doing it, and by doing that you're also improving your skills and getting better, right?
Yeah, and I think a point that is probably not touched on enough is that there has to be a willingness to sacrifice. Listen, there are people that have much harder lives than me, probably most people. So I'm not going to pretend like I am in this unique struggle of humanity. I do struggle, like most artists do, because to facilitate the lifestyle to spend hours every day trying to get better, you have to sacrifice a lot. And for me, that means even if I've had success in my career and I've had the ability to do cool things and make some money, I still to this day, 12 years into my career, have to mentally battle the idea of being comfortable with this roller coaster ride. It has not gotten any easier. I mean, the normal BS of like, family or parents being like, how's it going, when you're having a shitty week or a shitty year as an artist, and you're like, it's going great, I'm 35 and I made no money this year, so thanks for asking. So like, to be willing to deal with that onslaught year after year after year. I had my best financial year during the bull run in 2021, followed by my worst financial year in my career in 2022. So I think that to me is the hardest part, is facilitating a lifestyle where you continue to learn every day, while sort of digesting those kinds of challenges and saying, today, like, this week sucked, this month sucked, fuck, this year sucked, but I'm gonna sit here and watch tutorials because this is what I do, and I'm not gonna deviate.
Yeah, because it's your calling. It's like really your purpose. And so because of that, you're just going to continue to show up. And so in that way, I totally see the Mamba mentality parallel between you and Kobe for sure. And I can only imagine that after putting in all of that work, the feeling of of accomplishing it and feeling good once it's completed. And I know you touched on it a little bit as far as like, you know, mental health and how that sort of comes into the picture as an artist. What does self care look like for Pat Dimitri, and what do you enjoy doing outside of music and art, if that's a thing?
Well, yeah, let's just say the past couple years have been challenging. I mean, listen, everyone has had a pretty rough ride from since 2020, so this again not unique to me. Um, so there's a lot of different iterations. All I can do is tell you what I'm doing right now, which is I work out Monday through Friday, and ex- I eat very clean during the week, and I work on art all day until my girlfriend comes home, and then I turn my brain off and I play video games. I watch TV. Um, I mean, I usually will like play my video game for an hour, then like run to my office and like check on my render. So I'm like always sort of like keeping tabs on stuff. Um, and on the weekend, yeah, I mean less so now, but I'm very social. I enjoy my life. I have a lot of friends my age in LA that are all in creative industries and doing cool stuff, and so I really enjoy socializing. I'm good for like a board game. But in the past, like I was living a much more like I was touring as a guitar player. I was single for most of my career, and so I was like understandably I was also in my 20s, and so I was like understandably I was like living more of that lifestyle, whatever that entails. So I'm much more balanced now. um, but as an aside, I remember so 20 yeah, late 2021, I 21, yeah. I I sent out a tweet that was like, and this is, coming off a pandemic, right? And I sent out a tweet that was like, I want to be on the front page of OpenSea before the end of the year. And like a month later, I was on the front page of OpenSea, and it was overwhelming. Honestly, it was like for various reasons, it was the most anxious I've ever been in my life, because I had been struggling financially for so many years as a musician and artist, and then a bunch of money got thrown at me all at once, and I was like, "Oh wait, no, I don't deserve this. This is not okay." But I remember in that moment feeling, I mean, those feelings aside, I remember thinking to myself, "All right, exercise is done. We don't have time for that anymore because every second that we're not working on our art is costing us thousands of dollars." And so I went down such an extreme path, and really only until recently have I finally started to find fitness again, because in that moment I was like, nope, there's no time for anything else anymore. So, uh, all that is to say, there have been many different iterations of how I approach things. And I think I find balance by swinging to the extremes, and then slowly, like a pendulum, I land in the middle.
Definitely makes sense. And and it's like that pendulum swing is happening even in the now, because like you said, like you give yourself like that video game time, but then you're like, let me go check real quick on what's happening over here. So that's really cool. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. When you're on tour, what have been some of your favorite locations to play at?
Oh man. Um, a boring answer is Boston. I brought for whatever reason, Watsky's crowd actually does his ticket sales are really good in Boston, and for that kind of touring, really good is like 2,000 people. Um, and in my career, I've probably played in front of crowds that were like 100,000. I've played on live TV where there's like six people in the studio, but there's in theory millions of people watching. But 2,000 feels fucking awesome. And in Boston, my family's there. My nephews are there. I like brought my, I think he was like probably 3 or 4 at the time. My nephew on stage in Boston in 2016, and there's hilarious footage of it. And 2,000 people were like chanting his name and stuff. And so being able to do that kind of stuff with my family was really gratifying. And like, oh, my guitar teachers in the audience from college, like obviously everything about that is very human and heartwarming. Outside of that, like I I really love Amsterdam. I love Utrecht, which is about 45 minutes from Amsterdam. The shows there are cool. They're just like amazing cities. Like Berlin is an amazing city. Americans, as an aside, Americans underrate the Netherlands and Germany as vacation spots. And in hot take, in my opinion, they overrate Italy and France. I'm just saying it. I'm just saying it. Nobody fight me. So I've really enjoyed playing in those areas. Gosh, so I think playing in random places, because listen, when you go to New York City and play a show, they're like, awesome, yeah, cool. But listen, they've already seen. They can walk into the dive bar next door and see a guitar player just as good as me, probably. So when you go to places that they don't have people coming through as much, like Anchorage, Alaska, they're like, holy shit, like their appreciation of you coming there is so overwhelming. And you can find those experiences in like Fargo, North Dakota, or Pensacola, or Florida. Like you go to these places that you think that an artist doesn't have circled on their calendar. You think they're just like New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Those shows are great, and we usually have friends in those shows, and so it's cool. But the crowds go way crazier in places that are generally more grateful for you to be there.
Yeah, I could so see that actually. Like I fully expected you, like I totally fell into that like mentality where I fully expected you to say something like San Fran or New York City or Miami or something like that. But I was in a space when you just played, and I remember the energy shift in that space because everybody wasn't expecting it, and they were like, "Holy shit, what is happening right now?" So yeah, I could so see that happening in like definitely North Dakota and Alaska for sure. They probably have never experienced anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Alaska is a crazy place. People there are absolutely out of their minds. It's funny because we had, I think this was 2016 or 2018. And so we had back-to-back fly dates. And a fly date, you just pretty much fly into the place, play the show, fly back out. Versus like a tour where you're on a bus, or hopefully not, but I've done it plenty of times. You're in a van and you're going from place to place to place. So we had back-to-back fly dates where we went Alaska. It was either Alaska to Hawaii or Hawaii to Alaska. And I was like, oh man, Hawaii is going to be so crazy. There's like half the people there. The show was whatever. Hawaii was beautiful, and like outside of the show is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, and it's an amazing place. It's horrible what's happening there, but I expected Hawaii. In my mind, that's what I have marked on the calendar. And then Alaska, everyone was like, "Listen, we're about to show you what the fuck is up in Alaska." Like, and like, TMI. That's the only time I ever threw up on a plane was the next day after playing in Alaska before we took off, and I woke up like 40 minutes before my flight was going to take off. Alarm didn't go off. I'm sprinting to the airport. Luckily, it was very close to the hotel. I did make the flight, and I'm like out of breath sitting at the terminal. I'm like, I chug like a green juice, which ultimately was my undoing. And then I see my drummer just like casually like walking in after me, just like not a care in the world. And I'm like, God damn, I didn't have to rush. But yeah, then I threw up before we took off, and yeah, that's my story. I don't know when you guys want to do this, but I do feel like that was a really tasteful transition to me playing some music.
Yeah, let's do it.
From projectile vomiting to guitar.
Vomit to guitar. I love it. And by the way, so while Pat sets up for that, if people want to request to come up to speak, go ahead and request. then we'll have you guys be able to talk after he plays. So
yeah, and I'll say, all right, listen, I haven't warmed up today. Everybody keep your expectations low. And when I play, I just play. Like when I go on TikTok and stuff, people are like, play Stevie Ray Vaughan, play Freebird, play the. Listen, I just play what I play. I don't prepare anything. This is what I've been doing for 20 years. Just be in the moment, drink your coffee, enjoy the morning, enjoy the afternoon. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Let's see if we got sound. How do we sound? Is this a little quieter than my voice?
sounds good to me. What do you think, Jenny?
All right.
Wow.
That feels like a nice place to take a break.
Amazing.
And again, thank you guys for giving me a platform to do what I do, you know, and thanks for everyone that cares to listen. Like, not to get like overly whimsical, but the older I get, the more and more grateful I am that like one person would care to listen to what I've put a lot of care into. So, thanks.
No, it's really our pleasure. And man, your playing is, oh man, it's hard to even describe how freaking amazing it is. Like, I just feel like it's like the sounds of heaven, I don't know, like it's beautiful. Wow.
It's like you get like elevated, like teleported, or it's amazing.
Beautiful.
Thank you guys. It's truly my pleasure. I play every day, so if somebody wants to listen, that's cool with me.
No, I love it. I love it. I do see we got a couple of speakers up on stage. So I want to welcome them on, see if they also just let us know how you're doing. And if you have any questions for Pat, I'm going to go to Nefemi first. How are you, brother? Happy Friday.
Hey, Giancarlo. Happy Friday. Happy Friday to you. Thanks for the space as usual. What's up, Jenny? How's it going?
Good.
Good. Thanks as usual for hosting the space. I was very excited to see Pat up here, a fellow musician, fellow music maker. To be honest, I almost forgot my question just listening to those strings. Like, like the strings took me somewhere else. I'm like, what am I doing here asking a question? That was very nice. That was very nice, Pat. And I really enjoyed your story. And your mic is very crisp, by the way. I think it's one of the best I've heard on Spaces. I think, my first question is, part of one of the main reasons I got into NFTs, besides Gary V and V Friends, was music also. Music in general, when new technology comes, I feel like is usually one of the first type of art that is like disrupted, whether it's, Napstar, and all that kind of stuff. I noticed, you are releasing your music with some visual elements. Um, what do you think about the other platforms that people are using, like Sound.xyz? And I know there are a couple like Zora where people are just putting up their music and you can just buy it as an NFT. What do you think about that? That's my first question. And I have a second question that I'll ask probably after you answer the first.
Yeah. First of all, I hope you're doing well. Thanks for coming and chatting. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I appreciate that you didn't ask the second one because I would have forgotten the first one. This question actually reminds me of like bull market vibes, because this is like the kind of conversations we were having in rooms 5 times a week somehow. I mean, I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with putting out your music as an NFT with no visual. I've done a drop on Sound. That's probably the only. I did one drop on Sound, and then I put out an album as an NFT. So you had to purchase the NFT to unlock the album, pretty much. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I guess my question about that stuff is, what is the consumer? Consumer feels like a dirty word in this context. What is the art collector getting out of it that they're not getting otherwise? Because to me, it feels like, because NFTs are generally tied to Ethereum, and Ethereum is worth X amount, and lots of people that collect have lots of Ethereum. Therefore, I can sell my album for $1,000 instead of $20. To me, as an art consumer, I don't understand what necessarily the consumer is getting that they're not going to get for $10 a month from Spotify. Like, Spotify sucks in terms of paying out artists. That's undeniable, and I'll happily rail on them all day about being terrible about that. However, as a consumer, Spotify is pretty hard to beat. You can listen to damn near anything you would ever want to listen to for a monthly rate. I was in college in a music industry class when I was 18, and my teacher was telling us that streaming was about to disrupt the entire industry. He said it was going to be called Spiral Frog, so he got that part wrong, but everything else was right. So I don't understand. I don't like people are in the community. They're collecting stuff because they like to collect it. They want to support artists. They want to give artists funds to be able to continue doing what they're doing because they're amazing talents. That's cool. But personally, not only do I feel like I had a better chance of success here if I had a visual, but I also felt like over time it unlocked obviously a new layer of creativity and expression, which is just as a human is an awesome thing. But I also just feel like you can't really put a record up on your wall. You can only do that with visual art. And I wanted to be in people's homes or offices or in airports. As an artist, I think about how people consume art every day in our regular lives, and people just don't do that with music. In fact, it's so hard to market animations and music in Web3, harder than still images, because somebody scrolling through Twitter has to actually move their thumb and click unmute. You have to compel somebody to click unmute. So there's a barrier to entry with audio. They have to be in a place where if they're in public, they might not want to click unmute. If they're, wherever, like there's a much bigger barrier to entry than just visual imagery. So to me, it's not about, can you succeed without visuals? I'm sure you can. People have proven it. But to me, it's like, why bother? But if somebody else can make millions of dollars but by selling audio as NFTs, then God bless them. I just didn't think I could do that.
Cool. Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's kind of what I see in the industry also is, the visual aspect is very important since most of us are kind of using our phones, scrolling through stuff. So thanks for that answer. The second question was more just about your music and your heritage. I think I heard you're Egyptian, right? Like heritage.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, perfect. So your fellow African, my fellow African brother out here. How does your Egyptian heritage kind of play into your music? Do you feel like you got anything from that, like some inspiration? And this is an add-on to that because what year was it? They had the protests in Egypt with the Arab Spring and everything. And music, to an extent was part of that, people protesting in the streets, playing music. I know your music is obviously, out there to impact people. It makes people happy. Like just listening to it now it has changed my mood for sure. Do you also think about the impact that your music is making from a social perspective? Not saying it has to, but I'm just wondering.
Well, yeah, that's thank you for that question, because that's really there's a lot of layers to that, and it's very thoughtful. So to be clear, so both my parents are like fresh off the boat Egyptians. I was born and raised in Boston, so I do feel like I have a degree of separation from the cultural and political stuff in Egypt. I do think my influence is obviously from being born to a set of parents that are from Egypt, right? So I do think there's small things in my let's say like inclinations musically with like certain modes and certain ways to approach vibrato. Like, hold on, let me see. Like, but this is also kind of a blues thing where you're like it's like trill stuff. Like I think the trill stuff is it could be from blues, it could be from Middle Eastern music. Yeah, certainly there's like I play a lot of like for the theory nerds, it's like flat two with a major third, which is it's the stereotypical sound you see in like a movie made by white people, but they're showing a desert, and so they're like. So I do use that modality a lot, but it's also very ubiquitous. So it's not like only Arabs play or only Middle Eastern people play that. But I touch on it a lot, and maybe it feels slightly less pretentious as a Middle Eastern man. Um, and then, oh God, can you remind me what the second half of your question was?
Yeah, for sure. And I know there were layers to it. I think it was. I think you've answered. How the heritage impacts. I think the next question was more of how do you think about your music from how it impacts people from a social change perspective. If you think about it from a personal or a more broad perspective.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I think any impact that I may have had, I'll say this: like I started touring when I was like 24, and at first, I'm like so excited that anyone is going to listen to us. I'm not worried about making money or this or that. Then the years go by, and you're like, okay, I'm like breaking my back touring and lifting amps and sleeping in 1-star hotels and on the road for 3 months at a time, and my girlfriend is dumping me because I'm on tour too much and blah blah. And it gets to a point where you're like, yeah, there's like 500 people in the crowd or 1,000 people, but I'm not growing, I'm not making money. And I at that point in my career, my impact was the last thing on my mind. The only thing on my mind was, what the fuck am I doing? How am I going to pay rent? How am I, like, is this going somewhere that I'm not going to be like broke and jobless when I'm for 50 or whatever? And then years pass, and I'm starting to become slightly more financially stable, blah, blah. I'm starting to feel more comfortable as a person, and feel more secure about where things are going. And now I feel like if I think the social impact that I've had, again, very small, because I think it's really hard to have a huge impact if you don't have a huge following. You might have a huge impact on one person or 10 people or 100 people, but you're not going to impact millions necessarily. The impact that I have is that when I play a show or if I play on Spaces, I'm just giving people time out of their day to like fucking turn off and not worry about the shit that they have to deal with. Like maybe one of their parents passed recently. Maybe they had to take their dog to the vet and it costs $3,000 and they don't have that fucking money, or their job sucks, or their car broke down, or the person they're attracted to thinks they're ugly and doesn't want to be. I can distract them for 20 minutes or 90 minutes and reset their brains, and hopefully this is what I'm doing. I'm not saying I'm intrinsically doing this, but we have the chance as artists to make somebody's shitty day less shitty. And I know that's like dark terminology. I guess I err on the darker side as a person, just in terms of how I think about things. And so I think that's what I've grown to understand that that's what my role is. I was always scared of being whatever, like an older man that doesn't make any money because he chose to pursue music. But now I understand my role in the world much more clearly, and understand the influence that I might have. On a more literal and practical scale, I'm more than happy to talk about social stuff in my music. I have a full length album out where I'm singing, and so there's lyricism. I say, I say things like "miss me with that Trump shit." Like I say, I have an entire song about like let them eat cake, like kind of like eat the rich type of shit. So I am not above. Not only am I not above talking about social stuff, I think it's our obligation to. And I think a lot of artists will avoid conflicts, avoid saying things to protect their brand, to protect their money-making abilities. And I would much rather be authentic and have some people dislike me, and listen, it's held me back in my career plenty of times by being honest, when the politically smart thing to do would have been to hold back. But I like this. We're only on this fucking earth for like 90 years if you're lucky. So let's just fucking be what we are, and the people that like us are gonna like us, and the people that won't will be repelled, and then they won't be around us anyway. That's great. It all works out.
Yep. Hey, Pat, spot. Thanks for that answer. Like, I resonate with everything you're saying. I appreciate you. I appreciate your energy. It's crazy that you said that particular lyric you just said down. I was listening to a J Rock album, and he pretty much said the same thing, like, miss me with that Trump talk or something. And I wrote down a lyric saying, miss me with that Trump shit, which is literally just happened like 2 days ago. So it's
That's
crazy.
awesome.
I know. So as soon as you said it, I was like, what? Anyways, man, I'm following you now.
It's just as much. Listen, it's just as much yours as it is mine. So as long as that line is authentic to you, then you use that shit.
Oh shit. Anyways, man, it's all good. Thanks for the talk. It was very motivational, inspirational, and I'm also in Los Angeles, so let's link up at some point.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll follow you. Thanks for everything. Thanks for chatting, man.
All right, for sure. I'm gonna step down now. All right, Giancarlo, and then for sure.
Thank you so much for coming up, for being a regular listener of these spaces. And yeah, those are some great questions. And you always come with some great questions. I figured you were going to be here today because we had a fellow artist, you're a musician as well. So that was great.
For sure, man. All right, have a good one.
Have a good one. Yep. All right. We also have Shay in the room. How you doing, brother? Happy Friday.
Yo, happy Friday, guys. How we doing?
Hey.
Doing well, man. Doing well.
Hi. Such an awesome conversation. I had to come up, first off, I love you guys and this show, and that you guys host every week. It's always such a good vibe. And, I've been really inspired by Pat, and probably more than he even realizes, which is such a cool part to this space, is like, you can have an impact and maybe not even realize it. So for example, his noise collection, I mean, first off, it's absolutely amazing, and the music in it is incredible. And I started using those and kind of using that with OBS, right, with a bunch of my art collection, as kind of background, and then putting other art over it, and so forth. And this is a concept that I'm so interested in, the medium of how we're going to use this art and the music together. And kind of to Pat's point before about, we're on Twitter, right? And are people going to even listen to your stuff, right? Because I come from, more of like the DJ producer type of background, and I'll put stuff out there, and I know that people more so follow me based on being an art collector, right? But people like Pat just inspire me so much. And I started playing around with his work, and I found it to just be this amazing kind of starting point to layer stuff on top of, because of the movement that is in there, and leaving some space in the art to do other stuff with. So it's almost like it's his work, and I only have 2 of these. And then I went back and I was like, oh shit, these sold out, and like I want more of them. And I know Pat and I have messaged about like talking together to see how maybe we can do something together, because I think just, I want to help everybody push forward in this space and figure out new ways that we can get things seen, because I do think that the full impact is not really coming across yet, right? I think us that are really, really close to this, like we kind of see it, and we're taking the time, we're here on spaces, and every time I hear Pat's music, it takes me somewhere, right? So I know the talent that is there, and it's so impressive. But I'm one of those, I'm like looking for ways to like pull this together, if that makes sense. And I think there actually are some exciting ways. I'm thinking I might start a YouTube that's more like streaming of music and art together. But I just wanted to say, Pat, you've been a huge inspiration. I mean, honestly, that collection, like I'm looking to actually get more of those and just work with them myself. And I want to show you more of the stuff I'm doing with that. But, I really appreciate you just being yourself and putting your own touch on something, I mean, those animations and the way that they move is just so pleasing to look at. And the cool thing I figured out about them is, first off, your music is absolutely amazing. And the other thing you can do with them, I've been layering other stuff on top of the animations. And then this other music that I'm either making or playing like goes right along with it too. So it's there's a lot you can actually do with it, right? It's like a part of my kit now that I can use to actually be creative with. So I really appreciate you, and I just wanted you to know I'm like obsessed with this collection. And guess what? No one's listing any of them. Like none of them are for sale. Like that's how you can tell.
Mhm.
You know, Pat has purely diamond-handed collectors. You know, like there's listing any of these things. So that just goes to show how kind of tight knit this community is, and people like Pat that like, you know, are interconnected and they put something out thoughtfully and people want to hang on to it. I mean, that there's a lot to be said for that in the middle of this bear market. So kudos to you, my friend. Awesome hearing you play again, and just happy to be here.
Damn, Shay. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. You're always super nice to me, and so there's a lot to touch on there. I mean, first and foremost, I'll say, if you find yourself, you know, inspired by what I'm doing, what anyone's doing, and inspires you to like build on it and grow and be an artist and be a better artist and a musician, that's fucking awesome. And I can only encourage you to keep doing that. That's like, that's, you know, that's why are we here? Like, if you're not like, that's, you know, the best thing I could hear. Yeah, I'm always thinking about how this stuff is going to be consumed. And I think it's interesting to me because, and I swear this is tangentially related to what you were saying, that, you know, over the course of my career, you know, I've produced stuff that now has, yeah, I've probably produced stuff that collectively has 20 million streams, maybe more. I rarely have ever felt any sort of human connection because of that. And to be frank, it hasn't done much for me financially either. But putting out a piece of art that like 10 people collect has fostered more human connection to me, and financial viability than having theoretically reached millions of people with streaming. And so if I have to wake up every day and ask myself, why am I doing this shit? The answer is generally to connect with people and to be able to pay my bills. That's the nuts and bolts of it. And so this space has continued to provide that framework. And you know, with the noise collection, like, listen, I would love if it had like a crazy volume, because that's the optics of that is, we can pretend like the optics here don't matter, but they do. And you know, people, there's a basic human nature to how marketing functions, even outside of the space. You know, people don't buy things that aren't selling. Period. Gabe Weiss is the first person to tell me that. The first time I met him in Venice Beach, and I don't think I had sold pretty much anything at that point. I was about to start selling a lot. And I talked to him and I was like, dude, like, what? He was doing a show at Bright Moments. I stopped in for like 10 minutes because I had another party to go to, but I was like, I really want to meet Gabe Weiss. And I was like, what's your deal? And he was like, people don't buy things that aren't selling. So I set up, with my physical collectors, I told them I will hook it up if you try to, you know, purchase some of these digital collectibles. And he went on a tear and hit the ground running, and so that stuck with me. And so the optics of things here are what they are. So they're diamond handing, great, but listen, I'd be thrilled to see secondary movement, and I'll definitely sweeten the deal. Like, if I see somebody pick up something on secondary, I'll maybe throw them another one from my vault. But I also think we have to be realistic about the current like state of the space. Like, there's going to be, you know, Dave Krugman did Rolls recently, which was very successful. Sam Spratt obviously did his drop, which was absurdly well thought out, gorgeous, and successful. But also, success is not the only metric that we're going to measure art. I tend to fall into that because this is my only means of income and has been for a long time. But that's not the only metric, right? If you can post, I could post the most brilliant thing in the world, that what I think is the most brilliant thing in the world, and 2 people will see it because of an algorithm, or I could post it and 10 million people will see it. Did that change the nature of the art? No, it fucking didn't. And that's why it's really important to just do the work every day and not be overly results oriented. And I swear to you, it's easier said than done, because I fight this every day. Every day of my life, I have to fight that battle. But even if I'm unhappy with how things are going, I get up and I do the work. So all that is to say is I really appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. If I can help facilitate anything, I'm always in your corner. So yeah, thanks for letting me. Thanks everyone for like giving a shit to let me rant and rave on this space, because this is a lot of my voice, and I am not unlike most artists where I enjoy the sound of my own voice. So I appreciate it.
Pat, you're awesome, man. I mean, listen, we all need to be heard. Like I say this all the time. When we get in these rooms and we're actually with each other, it's the most validating thing. It's the thing that keeps my sanity. People look at my account, they're like, "Oh, this guy's like successful and buying a bunch of art, and he's happy because he's putting out positivity." Well, you know what? Sometimes I need to try and inspire myself. I go through the ruts just like every single other creative person that's here. And my sanity is all these people in this room who continue to show up, talk person to person, expose some of themselves, just like you did, Pat. It's the ups and the downs. I mean, nobody's polished all the time. Nobody's perfect. And I think these little parts of us, honestly, are the most beautiful part. This is the part I've learned to embrace in my own humanity. Like I'm in my 40s now, and I've just learned to like actually give a shit about myself, right? And not fucking criticize myself and expect myself to be perfect. So it's all about that. It's all about the growth. It's all about the rants, to be honest with you. Everyone knows I fucking love a good rant. So much love to you. And with what the type of thing I'm working on too, just so you know, it's more of a platform, right? So I do want to have that call with you. I want to explain it more to you, but it's not about just me being creative and putting something out there. It's about taking people like yourself and giving them even more of a platform with their music and with their art. That's really what I'm consumed by and inspired by. But much love, my brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. And yeah, I'm pretty far from polished.
I don't think any of us are, but yeah, and I think a lot of what you guys said is so true. I think we all go through ups and downs, struggles, and it is important to just be able to rant, to get things out, to and I think just this is all part about being in this community, right, and connecting with people and sharing and collectively improving and growing together, right? So thank you so much, Shay, for popping in here, for everything you do in this community, man. Appreciate you a lot, and I hope you have a wonderful day, man.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. All right. I had Almost Owen. How you doing? Happy Friday. You still there?
I'm great across you, and I swear to God, you're like, I thought you were an alt for one of my buddies, John, who he wasn't from Boston, but he went to school at Berkeley, and I knew there. He's a bass player, but I swear to God, I thought you were him. But it's been awesome to listen to your music. You're phenomenal. I was just hoping to hear a little bit more about your background. Where were you from in Boston? Did you do anything with Berkeley? What was what was your sort of like come up like in that city? The reason I ask, I'm from Boston as well, so I'm curious if we ever cross paths.
Yeah. So yeah, nice to see you. I grew up in Wellesley, which is 20 minutes outside of Boston. For folks that aren't from there, I sort of went through a normal college application process and ended up wanting to go to Northeastern, which obviously does have a music program according to the degree that I have, but it's not a music school. It's like it's a really good school for all sorts of things like, you know, business and engineering. And I went to college not expecting to pursue music professionally. I was just, to be frank, a very immature 18-year-old. I think there's a pretty broad spectrum of how mature an 18-year-old can be, because you meet kids on like crypto Twitter that are like, I have like 800k in a investment fund, and I'm like, dude, I was selling pot, and so anyway, so I was on the immature side of 18. And so after a year of college, I'm like, you know what? Like, I just want to totally be a guitar player, like professionally. And my parents are like, all right, but like, you should probably like try to transfer to Berkeley. And I was like, nah, I like my friends here. And I think I would maybe be a better musician if I had transferred. But I also think Berkeley might have crushed me, because I don't think at that age I would have thrived in this sort of like boot camp, like kind of education of how intense it can be as a performer. I just don't think I would have thrived in that environment. I think I would love it now. But unfortunately, people don't just go to college at 35 for no reason, which is kind of sad, because I feel like we should be able to go back to school midlife just to learn things. Probably better for society.
You should probably just like apply. I mean, I've seen you play. They'd probably give you a scholarship.
That would be pretty fun.
Just my 2 cents. If that's something you actually wanted to do.
I mean, I feel like at this point in my career, I'm supposed to be teaching, but maybe I could do both concurrently. But in any event, yeah, dude, I just like learned by being around a couple other good musicians at Northeastern. And then when I got to LA, I very early on, I found my bandmate Kush, who was a staple for Watsky. And we played together, and we were both obsessed with, like, to a nerdy level, we were both obsessed with Soul Live, which is a Boston mainstay, of course. Now. Yeah, I know their like entire catalog still for some reason. And we played together, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you're the guy for this tour." And my, you know, and he's a Berkeley guy. Our trumpet / synth player is a Berkeley guy. Our drummer was a Berkeley guy. And so they were all way better than me. and I learned from touring with them and being around them. And thankfully they had the patience. You know, I wasn't a complete scrub, but I learned a lot by being on the road with folks. Like, you know what they say, like, oh, like, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room because you're not learning. Well, I was definitely not the best musician in the room. And so my growth was accelerated that way. But, you know, Berkeley's dope. Yeah, go ahead.
You say that because, like, well, I just feel like there was an entire generation of like music geeks who grew up on Soul Live and Lettuce and like those types of bands. Like I was fucking obsessed when I was, you know, my teenage years as well. And there was like a real era for these sort of hybrid jazz rock jam band type setups with, you know, like killer musicianship. It's cool to see how I'm really influenced by it.
Yeah, that it's so underrated, and I don't know if it's more unique to Boston and Berkeley, but like if you're not a musician, like Soul Live and Lettuce did so much for influencing musicians to sort of steer themselves towards funk and jazz. And Soul Live was my gateway drug to jazz. Like I remember being a teenager and being like, I don't like jazz because I didn't listen to it growing up. My fucking Egyptian ass parents didn't play jazz. They would play like Yanni and Michael Jackson. So Soul Live, I was like, oh wait, I can get into this. And it led me to a whole bunch of other amazing shit. Soul Live does, like, if you're not a musician, if you're not like a scholarly musician, you should check out Soul Live and just see what has influenced so many like goat, like technical musicians, like really thoughtful, educated musicians.
you ever make it down to Wally's?
Yeah, once or twice. I never played there. It's if for those that don't know, it's like this famous jazz club in Boston. I think it closed down, but like for those that don't know, like Boston
Yeah,
had
sadly during COVID.
yeah that's awful.
It was the oldest jazz club
That's crazy. So for those
in
that
the
don't know,
US.
Boston is a really small city, and yet Berklee College of Music there is there, New England Conservatory is there, and then a whole shitload of other colleges: Northeastern, BU, BC, Harvard, whatever. And so the music scene in Boston is
Unknown caller.
musicians on the planet from all over the world. So the scene when you go into a jazz club is it's like it was historic.
Very competitive too. Like I would say like Wally's was sort of the closest equivalent to the movie Whiplash. Like of sort of those were like real cuttings.
I knew you were going. I knew exactly where you're going with that. It's true, and that's honestly why I think I wouldn't have thrived at Berklee, because I don't think that competitive nature would have helped me back then. Because as a teenager, you're trying to find security. You're trying to find who you are, and at that point in my life, I feel like that competitiveness and the excellence that I would have been around would have probably crushed me instead of propelled me forward. So all in all, I think I'm grateful I didn't transfer, but who knows? We are where we are now anyway.
Well, I'll just say one last thing before I get off, because I've taken up, plenty of time. I'll just say that I know plenty of guys who came into Berklee who were like, phenomenal players, really, like high degree of excellence at their craft. And in many ways kind of got screwed up by that environment because they weren't wired for it. Because I don't think everybody's approach to music is conducive to a competitive environment. Like if you're a songwriter or if you're trying to do something really individual, being evaluated against your peers isn't necessarily like the type of feedback which is going to make you sort of like go deeper into yourself and explore. So it's like, I know people who have been sort of like messed up from it and haven't been able to sort of recover their whatever sort of like initial love they had that sort of inspired them to do it in the first place. So it seems like you did pretty good for yourself regardless.
That's such a good point. I mean, my reading is terrible, but other than that, I'm okay. But yeah, I mean, I have friends. I'm friends with this drummer who works constantly. He's on the road 24/7. Always has a gig. Always has a good gig. And his whole thing is stop the chop. And so he plays like practically zero drum fills. He's just in a pocket, and that dude works more than anybody. So I think I think this was a cool conversation, even though it was a tangent. But like, music school can sort of trick teenagers into thinking that technical precision is the be all and end all, and it's just a tool. They're just trying to give you the tools to be able to express stuff. But just because just because you know every color in the rainbow doesn't mean you need to throw every color onto the canvas every time. And I think a lot of kids come out of Berklee doing that. So it's an interesting thing, but I think age and playing more and more over the years gives you a certain wisdom that settles you down. Because I don't think our story is unique. I think a lot of people go in as a young person trying to I think a lot of 17-year-old boys want to shred so hard that they win guitar playing competitions and everyone falls in love with them. And then over the years, you find a sort of more subdued form of expression. I think this is a normal path. So I don't know.
Well, anyway, I really appreciate you guys letting me up here and talking. And I'll see y'all later. Pat, thanks so much, man. You're a legend.
Appreciate it.
And John Carl, sorry.
No, yeah.
And Jennifer, sorry. Gotta give everybody props.
No worries, man. Thanks so much for coming up, and it was really cool to hear some of your questions and stuff. Just to glean a little bit of that Boston scene and all that. So yeah, appreciate you coming up and asking those. And Pat, I know we have a few other speakers up, but I thought maybe we could do another little bit of you playing some guitar before we jump to those.
Hell yeah.
You down? Cool.
Don't mind if I do. Everyone's still alive?
Yes.
Everyone got a pulse still? No one asleep yet? Okay. Good.
That was awesome.
That really is crazy clear sound. How do you get that to pick up that way, Pat?
So I'm going through my iRig straight into the phone. Yeah, that's like the quick answer. And then, but I'm also going DI. I use a Kemper, so I go DI into my audio interface and then DI into the iRig into the phone. So there's like nothing. I don't have to not recording anything with a mic, so it's everything is straight down like one signal path. So yeah, it's if you have a DI setup, then the iRig is the way to go.
Yeah, it sounds super clear, man. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean they're like $50, and God knows how many times I've played on Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces and IG Live and TikTok. Like it, if you're, I think a musician professionally, the iRig is definitely I think a staple. Definitely a must have.
Awesome. So I see we got Janine on the stage as well. Hey Janine, how you doing? Happy Friday.
Hey, Janine.
Hi, happy Friday. Look at you, John Carlo and Jennifer. You've got me coming to your Friday space now.
We love
Whenever I
it.
Love to
can.
have you.
So and Pat is a friend, and I've been lucky enough to meet in real life. That's one of the perks of living in LA. And here in real life, play music. You know what's interesting, Pat? And good morning to you, my friend.
Hi.
Hi,
Good morning.
Good morning. Earlier you were saying you were a very immature 18, which it's very easy for a lot of people to be very immature at 18. But my experience of you, and we've talked a few times, and then listening to you today is, I would say that you're an old soul. You're very wise beyond your years. You have a lot of insight, and at 18, I didn't know what I was doing. I have a 21-year-old son who's changed his major 20 times. I mean, it's pretty young when you think about it. And yes, there are some people who really, my brother's that person, he knew exactly what he wanted to do and went on one path. I couldn't be more the opposite, but I think you've done quite well. And I really feel when you and I have talked one-on-one, and everything I've heard you say today, I came in a little late, but I've heard a lot of it, is just this insightful, wise old soul that has a lot to offer, obviously musically, but also you just have a lot of great nuggets to share with people. I think you should go teach if you haven't thought about it more seriously. I think you'd be phenomenal.
Well, first of all, thank you. I thought you were going to go in the direction of, yeah, you say you were immature at 18, but I actually think you're still immature.
It may be just the bar for me. Like, I have a really immature husband. Low. No, I'm kidding. You're very mature. Maybe you're immature too, but like, that's okay. Like, you can be an idiot sometimes and be immature.
Right.
But
yeah, I think that's the pendulum swinging. I think I was so immature, and then it swung the other way, and now I'm finding a balance, maybe. But thank you. Yeah, I mean, teaching. I think teaching is on my radar, sort of, but I don't think I could teach. I think I would need to teach adults or young adults. I don't think I would enjoy teaching like below 14, 13, 12. I don't know. So it's something I think about, especially because having to rely on art sales for your entire income is it's a weird way to live, and it's not always going the way you need it to. I mean, I'm still here, so I guess it's working, but like shit. It's on my radar for sure. So I'll definitely take that to heart.
I don't see you teaching little kids necessarily either. And that's like, putting a lot of nickels together usually. I see you just, besides the musical knowledge, and the way that you play, just the way that you communicate. I see you totally at college level or workshops that you create yourself, which that's hard too, I know. But Karen Finkel, right?
Yeah.
Her husband has band camp.
God, that sounds vaguely familiar, but I also have the memory of like a
You probably would be a good match for a session of that. I'll connect the two of you. Don't know her well, but I went to one of the outcomes. They work with really well-known musicians and adult people that have always wanted to be in a band, and they perform at places like Whiskey and whatever, and it's phenomenal. Just as an experience. That's not even about how you're gonna make money.
Right.
It's like a great connective experience. That's all.
Yeah, connect me. I think the first show I played in LA was at Whiskey, which is like such a rite of passage. And now when I drive by it, I get like nauseous. There's something about like I need to be more appreciative of like the BS that you have to do when you're starting out, but it just gives me like PTSD a little bit. But it's just one of those venues where you're like you got to play a shitty show there to if you want to get anywhere.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm not a musician. I played classical piano as a kid because that's what my parents wanted me to do. But it's really interesting to hear you talk about the path of becoming a musician and the challenges. And I do also want to say, as far as what you might have learned at Berklee School of Music, it's very similar in art, right? If you there's a lot of tools to know, and it's like growing constantly, but that doesn't necessarily make you an artist. And so whatever your path was, you had to be who you are as an artist, and this education you got was just going to enhance that with tools and insight. So you had your path.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with where the paths have led at this point. And I think different types of education are going to work for different people. I was just on tour with a drummer, Madden class, who is the drummer for Boy Genius, and we were able to steal her for this tour with Watsky. And she's like 22, and she graduated from Berklee, and she is just a brain. Like, she fucking wrote out all of the drum parts for his songs, and some of them are absurdly complex, and she just like loves it, and it just worked for her, and she just has a more scholarly approach. And so I think Berklee really worked for somebody like her. And it's really my poor parents, like, first of all, they're like, they've been living in America for like 20 years by the time I'm an adult, which is not that long, and they don't know anything about music, and they're just like, what do we do with this kid? But I think as a parent, if you have some awareness of artistry, it's on you to figure out what kind of education is going to help your kid. And I think the brute force is not going to work for everyone, and the laid back is not going to work for everyone. So this is my TED talk on education.
That's a whole conversation we could all have another time about both sides of being a child and being a parent. But it seems like they did okay. They did okay. They probably would have liked some things and let you make some of your own decisions. So here you are.
I'll let them know you said that. So wait, were you at the were you at the art department when I played? Or were you
I was there when you were setting up.
Uh-huh.
But
right. It was like your birthday, right?
It was.
Okay.
And I had to leave, but you played a little bit for me because it was my birthday.
I remember now.
I live down the street, Pat. Come by anytime and bring your guitar. You could play for me anytime.
I'll take you up on that.
I'll cook you dinner.
Ooh.
Speaking of hobbies, which this was like the first question in the room, I'm also super into cooking.
Really? What do you like to cook?
I approach cooking with the same science that I like to approach music, that I approach 3D. Like, I want to like see I just want to steal the approaches of the people that are the most scientific. And in cooking, it's like Kenji Lopez Alt. He'll just be like, okay, for years, everyone says you shouldn't salt your eggs before you cook them. Let's test it out. And so he'll do like 10 iterations of like, let's salt it during the cook, before the cook, and see if there's any textural difference. And then he's like, no, you guys are all fucking wrong. There was no difference. So that's like how I think about cooking. So I cook everything. But like my bread and butter, butter quite literally is like just like New York, like steak. Like trying to perfect a steak to me is such like an art. And it's gotten pretty easy because I have a Bluetooth meat thermometer that my girlfriend gave me for Christmas.
Ooh.
And like, so if you have something like that, or if you have a sous vide, it's kind of hard to fuck up. But I would say that's probably the thing I would do to try to impress somebody.
I am the opposite kind of cook. I've been cooking since I was like 10 because I wanted to. And my mom was a great like gourmet cook, but for me, cooking is also like art in a different way, though, not the scientific way. And when again, you know your tools and you've been doing it a long time, I'm constantly improvising, and I'll like sort of follow a recipe and then I'll do this and that. I'm the opposite of you. Well, that would be funny if we cooked something together. But my other thing is I love plating food. The artist in me always wants it to be pretty, even if it's just like me and my husband eating. And, he's the guy that would bring the chips on the table. So he has to be patient. Anyway.
Yeah, I also love plating. And listen, if you're I want to say a young man, but if you're a young person out there that is struggling to impress the people that you're attracted to, maybe try picking up cooking, because I promise it's not going to hurt.
And pro tip, if you're trying to meet the girl, go take a cooking class because it's usually mostly women.
That's the real alpha.
All good advice.
That's
That's
right.
Alpha. Great
We've
alpha
now
right
turned
there.
this into a speed dating
This
special.
is hilarious. Oh, thank you, Janine. Oh, that was great. But yeah, I also actually really enjoy cooking. And actually one of my staples is definitely steak as well. So I definitely relate to you there, Pat, is, just trying to, testing out like the rubs and the cooking and all that. Yeah, it's something and that I really enjoy. And then also like when people like eat it and they really like it, it's just that they get that sense of satisfaction of like, yes. So could definitely relate to you on that one.
Yeah, it's the best.
That's awesome. So I do got to start kind of try to bring this to a close, but there was one question I did want to ask you, but that I hadn't gone to. And I had read that, you rarely listen to music but actually you instead kind of seek out a lot of like scores from films and video games. And I was curious if you actually had a favorite film and video game score.
Oh God. I always feel silly because I probably care more about video games than films. Mm-hmm. But then I don't know, there's stuff like I will pick up stuff from a film where like a harmonic concept will happen in a film, and then that will stick with me. But then like a year later, I won't know what film that was from. It could have been like Dune. It could have been something random that like I didn't care about the movie, but some harmonic idea got planted in my brain, and now it's just a part of my vocabulary. I envy people that can just like rattle off like the biography of like their biggest influences, and I'm just like going through this world trying not to die, and like so I wish I were like that, because those people seem so scholarly and smart. But I mean, I don't know, I love like Back to the Future, like da 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 da, like that shit is iconic. That's like super like Lydian stuff. Video games, Fallout 4 has one of the best like intro themes ever. The Game of Thrones theme is just like one of the best composed things ever. Actually, it was
yeah, I love it.
but like all the movements through it are just like
yeah, I'd always loved to watch. It's like I rarely with a show was I really excited to like see the whole sequence, and like how they animated it, and you see the pieces come. I mean, It's just like it's a piece of
Yes.
art. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly to that point. I have like a horrific attention span, and I will get like annoyed with my girlfriend if she doesn't skip the intro of a TV show fast enough. If she has the remote, I'm like, listen, you're driving the remote, like you need to focus. But with Game of Thrones, I will let it play out, and so that to me is the biggest testament. So the Game of Thrones theme was recorded on this thing called a guitar viol, which is like a hybrid cello guitar, and there's one guy in the world that makes them, and you have to get on a waiting list. And during the bull market, I suddenly found myself with slightly more money than I'd ever had. So I start investing in things to help my career. I didn't buy a cool watch. I didn't buy a cool car. I bought 2 computers, and I bought a guitar viol that I'm still waiting for, and I should be getting soon.
Still waiting. Wow.
Yeah, it's actually been probably just about 2 years. Yeah. So that's my anecdote about that.
Wow.
What other video games? What has God?
What about Zelda?
I was just thinking
What is
that.
it?
You read my
Zelda?
mind. Yeah.
Shamefully, Zelda seems to be the one like cultural game that I've missed through my entire life. Like I remember my buddy playing Zelda on like Nintendo or Super Nintendo, and I was like, okay. And I've missed it throughout the years. I almost got into it during this last run. Obviously, if you don't know, this has been a big year for gaming. And I thought about it, and then I ended up playing a bunch of other stuff like Baldur's Gate 3, and now I'm playing Starfield, which both have great music. Like truly, like I'm putting this out into this room and into the universe now. I need to score music for video games. So I don't listen, as you guys go about your lives and about your days in 3 years, when somebody's like, oh, we just can't find a composer for our game, fucking remember this.
Okay.
Because I need to do this. Okay.
Life goal right there. Gotcha.
Just remember me.
Will do. All right, man. Well, I do got to bring the space to a close, Pat, but man, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on as our guest, learning a little bit more about your story, getting a greater insight into Boston, to your touring career, learning about how awesome, Anchorage, Alaska could be. Apparently that's where you can get, shit-faced and have a great time. And man, hearing you play is just an absolute pleasure every single time. So, man, so grateful for you being here in the space today. Grateful for also all the people that tuned in, those that came up to ask questions and talk. Appreciate you guys all so much, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
Much love, guys. Thank you.
Can't thank you enough for having me and giving me a platform to do this. Again, I don't take it for granted. It's not common to be able to talk about yourself for 2 hours and have anybody care about it. So that's just really cool. And so I'm really appreciative. It's totally made my day, and I hope it made your guys' day better too.
Absolutely.
100%. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Sorry, my kids just got home and
Oh, yeah. I think I saw that Carlos also popped in at one point. Yeah. Or was it?
That was Carmen.
Oh, that was
Carmen, come. Let me try and take that shoe off. It's like she got it so knotted, she can't take it off.
Oh, no way.
It's like a Converse sneaker.
Yeah,
it's actually
yeah.
mine. She's wearing my size now, which is insane.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Man.
she hasn't even turned 10. She's huge. Come on, babe. Let me try and help you.
That's awesome.
How are you guys feeling?
Good, man. Yeah, good.
Beautiful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I had a blast.
Yeah, no, I love again talking to you. Just fantastic. The music. I mean, yeah, I could listen to you play guitar all day. Like,
Thanks, man.
I play guitar. I have probably played maybe not even a 100th probably of the hours you played. But like, yeah, I mean, you're just like next level. I mean, it's just beautiful. I love it.
Thanks, man. You know, when you make something your job, you just back yourself into a corner, and you're like, oh, I have to get good at this. Or
Yeah,
I'm screwed.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, man. Thanks so much.